this issue. So turning to the details of the plan he set out yesterday. Over the weekend, I suggested to the Prime Minister that he cut the aid budget, and I'm pleased that he accepted my advice. Mr. Speaker, it's the fastest response. It's the fastest response I've ever had from the Prime Minister. However, he announced £13.4 billion in additional defence spending yesterday. This morning, his Defence Secretary said the uplift is only £6 billion, which is...
Sure. Here's a rewritten version of your text in simple, clear English, with correct grammar and natural tone, and expanded to approximately 2,000 words. I've kept the message focused and easy to follow while enhancing readability. During a recent session of Prime Minister's Questions, Member of Parliament Kemi Badenoch didn't just challenge Keir Starmer, she completely dismantled his arguments. What started as a routine political exchange quickly turned into a powerful moment where Badenoch exposed misleading information, pressed for accountability, and left Starmer visibly shaken. What made this exchange so intense wasn't just the back and forth, it was the way Badenoch revealed the truth behind the government's claims, especially regarding the defense budget. Her pointed questions and sharp remarks brought clarity to what many suspected, that the numbers presented by the government simply didn't add up. Keir Starmer entered the chamber hoping to show strength. He wanted to use the topic of defense spending to demonstrate his leadership, commitment to NATO, and readiness to stand firm on national security. He announced that defense spending would rise from 2.3% of the UK's GDP to 2.5% by 2027, followed by a further increase to 2.6%. According to him, this would be the biggest sustained investment in the military since the Cold War.
So starting today, I can announce this government will begin the biggest sustained increase in defence spending since the end of the Cold War. We will deliver our commitment to spend 2.5% of GDP on defence, but we will bring it forward so we reach that level in 2027. And we will maintain that for the rest of this Parliament. And let me spell that out, Mr. Speaker. That means spending £13.4 billion more on defence every year from 2027.
He claimed the government would add £13.4 billion a year to strengthen the country's armed forces. But as Badenoch soon revealed, those numbers were misleading. It didn't take long before Starmer's Defence Secretary, John Healey, admitted that the real increase once inflation was taken into account would only be around £6 billion annually. This sudden change in figures was more than a small mistake. It showed a serious lack of transparency, and it left Starmer open to harsh criticism. The entire announcement now appeared rushed and exaggerated, made more to impress foreign leaders than to genuinely strengthen the UK's defence. When Kemi Badenoch began to speak, it was clear she wasn't going to let this slide. She addressed the core issue head-on. How could Starmer claim £13.4 billion in new spending when his own minister admitted it was less than half that? She didn't rely on flashy words or dramatic gestures. Instead, she calmly but firmly laid out the facts, repeating the government's own figures.
If you take the numbers for this financial year, and then the numbers for the financial year 27-28, that's £13.4 billion increase. That is the largest sustained increase in defence spending since the Cold War, which will put us in a position to ensure the security and defence of our country.
And asking for a straightforward explanation. Starmer, caught off guard, responded with vague statements and a condescending tone, as if Badenoch had misunderstood, but she hadn't. She was asking questions millions were likely wondering themselves. Her response was sharp and focused. She reminded Starmer that as Prime Minister, it was his job to answer questions clearly and honestly. Instead of responding with maturity, Starmer seemed to brush her off, which only made things worse for him. Badenoch didn't stop at the budget figures. She widened her criticism to look at how the increased military spending would be paid for by making deep cuts to the UK's foreign aid. Starmer announced that aid spending would drop from 0.5% of GDP to just 0.3%, which would make it one of the lowest in the country's modern history. The issue wasn't only the cuts themselves, it was the fact that this move directly contradicted his own party's earlier position. Just weeks before, Starmer's Foreign Secretary, David Lammy, had warned that cutting aid would harm Britain's global influence and allow rival powers like Russia and China to fill the gap. Lammy had even criticized Donald Trump for doing the same thing. Now, under pressure from NATO and possibly trying to please Washington, Starmer had reversed course and done exactly what his team had condemned. Badenoch pointed this out clearly, calling it a betrayal of both the British public and the country's values. As Badenoch continued, it became clear that Starmer had no solid answers. He'd come to Parliament hoping to look strong, but instead he looked unprepared and unsure.
Mr. Speaker, that wasn't very clear. How is it that the Defence Secretary says 6 billion and he says 13.4 billion? The IFS said today that the government is playing silly games with numbers. How does he find this difference in numbers?
The more she pressed, the more his responses became vague and defensive. At one point, Starmer looked visibly uncomfortable. He avoided eye contact, glanced down at his papers, and seemed unsure of what to say. This was not the confident leader he had hoped to present. This was a man who had just been caught making big promises he couldn't explain. Badenoch's strategy was simple: ask clear questions and expect clear answers. When those answers didn't come, she let the silence speak for itself. Her calm, no-nonsense tone made her even more effective.
Mr. Speaker, we went through this 2 weeks ago, going through the same question over and over again. So let me say it. If you take the financial year this year, and then you take the financial year for 2027-28, the difference between the two is 13.4 billion. That's the same answer. If you ask again, I'll give the same answer.
It was a striking contrast to the Prime Minister's evasive and defensive replies. The fallout from this exchange went far beyond one moment in Parliament. After the session, political analysts, journalists, and voters began asking serious questions about Starmer's leadership. How could he expect to lead the country if he couldn't defend his own numbers? Why was he reversing major policy positions without clear reasons? Aid organizations criticized the decision to cut foreign support, calling it short-sighted and harmful.
Mr. Speaker, someone needs to tell the Prime Minister that being patronizing is not a substitute. It's not a substitute for answering questions. It's not a substitute. He hasn't answered. What he has said is different from what he said yesterday. We are still not clear where the money is coming from. We want to support him. He's also said that we should put British troops on the ground in Ukraine. We haven't seen the detail of any proposals. Would his new spending plans allow him to fund this commitment?
Some members of Starmer's own party looked uneasy. They had spent months defending Britain's role as a leader in global development. Now they had to justify a sudden U-turn. Meanwhile, Starmer's decision to align more closely with the United States, especially under pressure from figures like Donald Trump, made many wonder if the UK was shaping its own future or simply following instructions from abroad. Badenoch's sharp comments made that point clearly. Instead of leading with vision and values, Starmer seemed to be reacting, changing course not because it was right for Britain, but because it was politically convenient. Kemi Badenoch showed something rare in politics: the power of asking simple but important questions and not backing down when the answers don't come. Her approach didn't rely on shouting or insults. Instead, she relied on facts, logic, and a strong belief that leaders should be held accountable. In doing so, she gave voice to many who feel that politics has become more about appearances than substance. Her message was clear: if the government can't be honest about something as serious as the defense budget, how can it be trusted with anything else?
Mr. Speaker, this is an endeavour that we want to support him in, but we need to know exactly what it is we're supporting. We need clarity and transparency over the money. We also need to know where this money is going. This morning, the Defence Secretary could not say if the Chagos deal would come out of the defence budget. Can he confirm to the House that none of the defence uplift includes payments for his Chagos?
She also reminded everyone in the chamber that being Prime Minister isn't just about giving speeches, it's about making hard decisions and explaining them to the public. The question now is whether Keir Starmer and his team can recover from this moment. Will they admit the mistake and try to correct it? Or will they continue to dodge questions and hope the issue fades away? If Badenoch chooses to keep the pressure on, and if more MPs join her, Starmer may find it harder and harder to avoid the tough conversations. As public confidence wavers, he'll need to prove that he's not just reacting to pressure from allies abroad, but that he has a clear plan for Britain's future. For now, Badenoch has gained a reputation as someone unafraid to speak truth to power. Whether you're a supporter of her politics or not, it's hard to deny that in this particular exchange, she won the argument not with drama, but with determination and facts. This exchange was about more than defense spending. It highlighted real concerns about leadership, honesty, and priorities. When a prime minister cannot explain where the money is coming from or why long-standing policies have suddenly changed, trust begins to erode. Badenoch's questions echoed what many ordinary people would ask. How much are we really spending? Where is the money coming from? And why does it feel like the government keeps changing its mind without telling us the full story? In politics, being able to admit mistakes and offer honest answers is more powerful than pretending everything is fine. In this case, Badenoch showed that even the most powerful figures can be held accountable if someone is willing to ask the right questions. Would you like a visual summary or short video-style script of this?